Hello and welcome to a premium deck profile. Today I want to talk about one of my pet decks that I've had to update since the last ban list. This is Crest Luard. We now no longer can play V Dragheart Luard in the deck, so I've switched to G Dragheart Luard, which is going to change how the deck plays quite a bit. Quick introduction. Crest Luard is a deck that is built around hard-searching grade 1s with various useful effects. Recycling those grade 1s back into the deck to both play a stall game plan and or to just have a recursive game plan where we execute our main win con every turn. To do this, it also has a lot of great defensive tools, recyclable PGs, multiple ways to G-Guardian, G-Guardians that have PG effects on them, and our main win condition is a stride with crit and 2-card guard. And that's going to grind a lot of cards in the opponent's hand, and complemented by that, the Crest is going to give us 5k to the front row for evasive card in the G-Zone, which gives us a lot of late game scaling power. Hopefully, that means the longer the game goes on, the more likely we are to win. So without any further ado, let's get into the main deck. Starting with Drag Prince Root. This is our grade 0 starter. You have to play this one because it is referenced by name by Drag Wizard Knees, the card that gives us a crest. Then we have our main grade 3, starting with 4 copies of Dragheart Luard, the G version. It's identical to the D version as well. This has the effect that when you have Ritual 3 at the beginning of your ride phase, you can put 2 normal units back into the deck, and then get the effect that you have free stride for the rest of the turn. And then when you stride over it, you can counterblast 1 to search out 2 grade 1 or less cards to separate R. This is really useful. Our Crest says if we don't pay the cost of stride, we can get a crit back into deck at the end of turn, and this gives us free stride. Also, it puts back 2 normal units, so we can recycle anything we need into the deck that isn't a trigger, and then we can search for 2 grade 1s to keep the deck nice and thin. This gives us a lot of options for how our turn plays out, and a lot of bodies on the board to pay for some steep costs we have that requires to retire our own units. Only downside, this card doesn't do anything on grade 3 without striding over it, so your options are play a slow game where you go first on purpose and don't stride on the first turn, but you ride up and you just try to survive, and then you have free stride for the rest of the game. Alternately, you choose to go second, and you try to draw a grade 3 or the stride crit in order to make sure you can stride going second. You try to play catch up with what the opponent did to you with their history collection stride. Unless you're playing against another deck which doesn't have history collection, in which case you always go second. So that requires you to kind of know what the opponent's on. This has some problems with it as a strategy in general. A lot of decks can do a really devastating turn 3, and we are not fully online with our defensive power until after that. So that makes surviving that history collection stride the hardest part of the game, one way or the other. So just keep that in mind. However way you do it, you're potentially opening yourself to getting blown out by a really good turn 3 rush down from the opponent. But hopefully the payoff is worth it with the late game potential of this deck. Then we have our secondary grade 3. This is Origin Mage Ildona. This has the effect that it counts as a grade 1 in deck or drop. So it can be searched and it can be counted for ritual. And then it has a skill in the hand. If your Vanguard's grade 1, you can discard this and reveal the top 10. If there's 2 grade 1s in that pile, you can add a grade 2 or grade 3 card, grade 2 or greater card from that pile to your hand and then shuffle. This really helps for making sure we find Luard every game. We're a Crest deck, so we are hard locked into only being able to ride cards with Luard in their name on grade 3 or greater. So that is going to make sure that we never brick on that. You can play 3 copies of this or 4 copies if you're really worried about it. It's also a good rearguard attacker. It has on attack CB1, retire 2 rearguards, and draw 2 cards. That's also Vanguard skill, but we're never going to ride this for a Crest deck. And this is a really useful way to both clear the board and get units that we want to recycle back to the drop, and also to just plus cards and try to survive the opponent's turn. Then we have our grade 2, starting with 4 copies of Mage of Fameblades Quest Crate. This is the V Ride Fixer promo. They discard at the beginning of ride phase to check the top 5 for grade 2 or less cards, and they all have an effect on attack while boosted. Ours is we CB1 and search the deck for a grade 1 and call it to R. So that can give us multi-attack, or it can just give us utility, whichever one we need. We're primarily using this to try to discard it at ride phase to find the Crest, and then we figure out where to go from there. But it's also just a good card to have in general. At all stages of the game, it either helps you smooth out, or it helps you search for things you need, or it's a decent attacker. Then we have 1 copy of Atrocious Mothgirl Maple. This card basically does nothing, but it has the effect that when your grade 3 or greater Vanguard is placed in the ride phase, that includes striding by the way, you get to call it from drop. This means we always have sacrifice fodder for Luard's on stride effect, which will guarantee that we can keep the grade 1s flowing from the deck. Aside from that, it's just a grade 2 10k vanilla. You can ride it and Soul Blast out later if you need to. You can attack with it and safely sacrifice it to Eldona to get a card draw from a unit you don't care about, so on and so forth. We have a lot of self-retire in this deck. And then we have 1 copy of Dragfencer Dagda. This is our main late game closer. This card has GB1 Ritual 5. You need 5 grade 1s on the drop. Counterblast 1 and choose one of your grade 3 or less grade 1 or less rear guards and retire it. And when this unit attacks a Vanguard, pay the cost. If you do, search for up to 2 grade 1 cards and call them to separate R. You have to have a Vanguard with Luard in its name to do this, which we're always going to because we're a Crest deck. And it's not a once per turn effect. So that means if you hit a stand trigger, which is entirely doable in this deck, you can in fact swing with this again and do the effect again. So every swing with this represents 2 attacks, one from itself and one from the unit it's going to call. And because we're a Crest deck, call literally anything that is a grade 1. It doesn't matter. And you can also call Eldonas because they're grade 1s in the deck, which means that after, if you can swing to this, call an Eldona, and if you don't hit a stand, you can actually retire this and whatever was boosting it to get a draw 2 and potentially put this back in your deck later, set up the loop, whatever, however you want to do it. This finding Eldona is a good way to pivot from trying to kill the opponent into trying to draw cards in the middle of your battle phase, depending on if they hit defensives or things like that. And then we have our grade 1s, starting with 4 copies of Drag Wizard Knees, the most important card in the deck. This generates a Crest when you ride over Drag Prince Root with it, and then it draws a card. And the Crest gives us a variety of effects. First, it changes the power of Luard cards to 13. Then it restricts us to only writing cards with Luard in its name for grade 3 or graders. It gives us the effect that we have 5k to the front row face-up card in the G zone when we're on a Luard. And then it has the end of turn, if we strode without paying the cost, we can choose a crit from drop and put it on the bottom of the deck. That's all very good effects. The Crest scaling alone would be enough to make this a worthwhile strategy on its own. The crit recycling is just icing on the cake. Really solid, and we don't care that this is a vanilla on any turn besides turn 1, because, again, Crest scaling means it's going to hit for big numbers anyways. So just a perfectly fine card to have once you have a ton of power added to it from passive effects. Then we have a copy of Black Sage Charon. This is a countercharger on place by card effect. You Soul Blast 1 and countercharging its 3k power, bringing it up to 11. This is probably the most compact, efficient countercharger you can play in Shadow Paladins. You can consider playing more copies of it. Instead, I'm playing a different countercharger as my second one. Then we have our Nemains. These are kind of mixed up, sorry. Let me go through these. So we have 3 copies of Nemains. This is a grade 1 5k unit that rests to search for another 5k unit and call it to rearguard, and it has a hard once per turn clause, so no using multiple domains in the same turn, but you can find domain with domain. Our main goal is to try to find Dumpfoot Dragon, which will then Soul Blast and retire itself to search for Blaster Dark, which we will then use as a grade 2 ride target, allowing us to get away with playing so few grade 2s. As long as we have a domain on turn 1 as a rearguard, we can find the Blaster Dark, assuming we haven't drawn this card, which would really suck. Then we have Fallen Dive Eagle. This is a perfect guard interceptor, but only for rearguard swings from the opponent. And it's a 5k, so we can search it. And then we have Drag Wizard V-Crow, another 5k that has, when this is retired, for the effect or cost of a ritual card, you get to put this in Soul and countercharge 1. This being able to be searched out and then being able to be retired by Morfessa, which has a retire effect and also has ritual, means that we have a pretty consistent way to use this, and we're always glad to have access to it on a whim. So that is the domains package. We also have these 2 cards, technically can be searched by domains, but usually won't be. These are Conspiracy Knight Crady Lads. They are the Heal Guardian promos from V format. You can pitch these for the cost of G Guardian, but also if you call them to Guardian and you remove a heal from the drop or hand, you get to use this other effect, and it's different for every clan, but ours is that we get to pick 2 grade 1 rear guards without Sentinel, and until end of turn they gain 2 red text effects. One is that they get intercept and can intercept from the back row. The other is that when they're retired from Guardian, they go back to hand. And then they also get 5k shield. So if we pick 2 10k grade 1s, we get another 30k shield by guarding with this card, bringing us up to 40 for the low price of removing a heal from dropping guarding with this. That's pretty solid. Also, our G Guardians are really good in Shadows, so being able to use this for G Guardian is solid. And there's a fun micro synergy with itself. Let's say your board is a domain and a copy of Crady Lad. You can call this to Guardian, remove a heal, to give these 2 cards 5k shield, intercept, and go back to hand when they're retired. So you get the 40k shield, as I mentioned before, and then these go back to hand. You have 10k shield, of course, to use how you want, but you also have another Crady Lad now, which you can have set up by searching this when you had one in hand already. And then you can use this one to G Guardian, and that will give you a lot of defensive power over the course of a turn. This combined with the fact that we can recycle our PGs is amazing. Then we have 1 copy of Earth Elemental Connell. This was technically a main search target. It's just out of order. This card has the effect that when your opponent's effect makes you or them choose one of your units, they must choose this card as much as possible. So this will essentially force them to retire or attack, or retire or bind or whatever this card, which is going to protect something else you have in play. It's going to be like a spell skite if you played Magic the Gathering, for instance. Really useful effect to have, and the fact that we can hard search it with main means we can always have it when we need it. And primarily, we're going to use it to protect Honley. Honley is a rearguard that has the effect that the 5th or more battle attacking a vanguard with a rearguard cannot be done unless a counterblast is paid. So this is going to just tax the opponent's resources and force them into going for smaller numbers of attacks, or hard punish them for spending too much CB and then not being able to do 5 or 6 attacks. Really strong card. It can single-handedly shut down certain decks aggro plan entirely, and it's really strong when you leave it in play, because then you get to keep using it turn after turn, but your opponents are going to try to remove it, and this Connell will force them to have 2 ways to remove it before they can actually start getting around your Honley effect. Solid synergy there. Honley is really important. This deck can hard search it basically whenever we want because of Luard's effect, and that makes us really good at getting Honleys ready to survive decks that go for that plan. Just keep in mind that in some matchups, you still have to remove the Honley, either because they can kill your entire board, or because you need to get 2 Honleys active, and you need them to be untouchable. Then we have our PGs, 4 copies of Dragsaber Ezros. Dragsaber Ezros has the effect that, 1, when you play it from hand, you can use it as a perfect guard, but 2, it has GB1 and Ritual 3, choose one of your rear guards and retire it, and if you have 2 copies of this, 2 cards of the same name as this in the drop, one of them goes to bottom and one of them goes to hand, making it a self-recycling PG that also puts a PG back into the deck for you to potentially drive check or draw into, which is a very strong effect. If you want to take this synergy even further, there is a card you can consider playing. I have it over here, actually, and it's Sage of Risk to Crest. This card has the effect that your grade 1s get intercept, as long as you're on grade 3 or greater, and instead of playing this, you could play a split with 2 normal unit versions of this card from Standard. There's 2 Dragsaber Ezros in the D format that have the exact same name, but are just normal perfect guards, and they don't specify that they have to guard from hand to get the perfect guard effect. So that would let you search those out, say, with Luard's effect, or with Dagda's effect, or with Kuskrade's effect on attack, have a grade 1 perfect guard in the front row to intercept with, and then when you have that in the drop, you can use this card's effect in the drop to put that one back into the deck and this in the hand, and you can search it out again to set it up every turn. That gives you a lot of perfect cards, but it requires the opponent to not have any way to interact with your board, or the opponent will just start attacking your front row rear guards first, which means you could potentially keep the combo preserved by playing Dismel, which is a G-Guardian that gives a perfect guard effect to a rear guard and makes it untargetable for the rest of the turn and can't be hit for the rest of the turn. That's an option to go into. It's going to cost you 1 more deck slot, and it's going to require you splitting your G-Guardian, your perfect guards, which means a slight bit more inconsistency because you won't consistently have one of these in the drop every game sometimes. Still a pretty solid effect. I can't take credit for that. The world champion who recently won with Fenrir OTK gave me the idea, told me to try that out. I currently am not playing it because this deck is tight on space, but if I look at it again in the future and tool around with it, I might find room to cut for the Sage of Risk to Crest. But for now, we're playing these 4 PGs. These are really important. You can play draw PGs if you're willing to give up some crit space, and you just want more grade 1 slots to play for toolbox options. You can also swap one of these out for an Elementary. It's not that big a deal. Then we have our heals. 4 grade 3 heals. Astral Chain Dragon. These have the effect that they can give 10k to your Vanguard or -2 crit to an attacker when you haven't ridden grade 3 yet, when you guard with them. They also pitch for Stride because they're grade 3s. There's some cards in Keter that allow you to stack grade 3s to the top of the deck, even after they banned Reverence Rush, and so that synergy would let you stack heals. We're not playing it currently. But otherwise, you just need 4 heals. You want a G-Guardian a lot in this. If you don't want to play 4 copies of that grade 3 heal, you can play 1 copy of the Revenger heal, Emancipating Revenger Allele, which when you use it for G-Guardian will bind a heal and itself from drop and give you either Counter Charge 1 or Soul Charge 1. The only reason that I'm not playing that is because it clashes directly with playing Crazy Lad, which says that you need to remove a heal from drop to get the... Oh, I think it's over in this pile. You need to remove a heal from drop to get the effect that it gets on Guardian, and if you have no heals and drop because you used an allele, you can't use the effect. You have to spend another G Guardian. Sometimes you're trying to keep the number of G Guardians face up at a low number. Then we have our crits, starting with 4 copies of Knight of Evil Spear Gillinger. This is the Stride crit. It counts as a grade 3 for the cost of Stride. Really important. We don't have a lot of Stride fodder in this deck, and if we're going second, we absolutely need to Stride on that first grade 3 turn. Then we have Taboo Mage Kafar. These are the History Collection draw crits. They give, they've been updated to be 10k power and 50k shield, and they draw a card and you defensive check them. Really solid. We can't use the other effect because we're not on, Claret Sword Dragon. Then we have our stand trigger, 3 copies of Cursed Eye Raven. This has the effect on R at GB1. We can rest this unit, put it on the top of the deck, shuffle, and then check the top 2, call any number of the cards from that top 2 as rest, and then put the rest of the cards on the bottom, and then at the end of the turn, we retire the cards we called this effect. So we don't really care about calling stuff that much, but it's nice to have. Mostly we just want to be able to put the stand trigger back in the deck to drive check it in the same turn. But that being said, we do have things like Morfessa and other strides where you want to retire our own units for costs. And being able to just get 2 units off of 1 card for nothing while also putting a stand back in the deck is really strong. Especially if we can call either grade 1s we want to build Ritual or grade 1s we don't care about, like additional copies of Luard. Or not cards we don't care about, not grade 1s we don't care about. And then lastly, we have the over trigger. I'm playing Spiritual King of Night Sky Nicholas Celia. This is the dark OT or the purple OT you might have heard. When you drive check it, you pick a card up from damage and then call up to 1 card from hand and give it 10k. So it gives you another attack. It is a forced heal that also doesn't care about what your damage is relative to the opponent. You just get to heal from it, which is really solid in a defensive-oriented deck. It also helps you get any important pieces, like Perfect Guards or Counterchargers or Hanleys, out of damage into your hand. It's just solid all around. If you want to play a more aggressive game plan, I recommend playing Spiritual King of Ignition Valnote, the red one. That one will give you the ability to put a restand once per turn effect on a standing unit after you draft check the OT, and then that unit you can give the 100 million to, and you can swing with it twice. Really strong. If you pair that with Dagda, you just get an absurd number of attacks. So that's the main deck. Now let's get into the G Zone. Starting off with our main win condition, 3 copies of Drag Principal Morfessa. This card has the effect that you can CB1 once per turn, turn a card from your G-Zone face up, and retire 2 rear guards, and draw 2 cards, and until end of turn, you count your triggers as grade 1s for the cost for ritual count. Technically, they just count as grade 1s in the drop zone, which can technically be an important difference. So then this has continuous on V, Ritual 10. All of your front row units get power plus 15, plus 1 crit, and when your opponent would call cards from hand to Guardian, he or she must call 2 or more cards at the same time. So Ritual 10 is trivially easy to reach with this effect because all the triggers will count, so you only need like 4 or 5 grade 1s, and the rest of your drop could be triggers, and that's just the normal occurrence from guarding sometimes, and you'll have the full effect. 15k to crit is nothing to sneeze at. You factor in Crest power to that, you can often have 35k to your front row as early as turn 4, and 2-card guard on everything, and multi-attack from things like Dagda or Kusgrade. That's going to demand a lot of cards out of the opponent's hand. In the meantime, you're going to be plussing with this effect because you're going to retire cards that you called off of card effects and thus didn't spend any cards from hand to get. You can also, if you can hit any triggers, this gets even more out of hand because the deck caps out at 4 attacks normally. If it's a stand, though, it gets up to 5 attacks. If it's the red OT, it's even more. But this gives you a lot of pressure, and any additional attacks you hit off of a stand trigger with this are insane. So you could even consider playing 4 stands if you really wanted. This card is also going to flip something. It isn't GB locked, so if you've just like guarded a bunch and have gotten a bunch of grade 1s in your drop zone by whatever means, you can just go into this on your first stride and potentially have your late game option right away. Although this card does get better the longer the game goes on, because with 2-card guard and crest scaling, eventually your numbers are perfect guard or die, and the opponent will have to spend 3 cards to perfect guard. Next we go into Dragobus Luard. This card is good at all stages of the game, but gets really potent in the late game. This has Act on V once per turn, Soul Blast 1, and flip a copy of itself face up, retire a rear guard, and search your deck for 2 grade 1s, and if you called 2 cards the ritual ability, you get to retire something. It's a really strong effect. It's basically the same as our Luard on Stride effect, so this combined with that, combined with the main searching things, means we can pretty easily build a board from almost nothing. And it could be a board of all cards we hard searched specifically to have, which is very valuable. It also is a card with the ritual effect, so it can trigger Vicro. And then it has a GB3 Ritual X. All of your front runner units get 10k power for every 4 grade 1 cards in your drop zone. So this is good early because if you have, let's say, 1 G Guardian used on your, if you went first and used 1 G Guardian to get 5k power to the crest from that, and then you use this, flip another card, you get another 5k from that, you can then get 10k from this effect potentially and have 20 to the front row, which is good for early rush. And you don't have quite enough ritual or ways to get ritual up for Morfessa. Alternately, in the late game, the power gets astronomical. You can have plus 20 to the front row easily, or plus 30 even, and that's going to just be devastating, especially adding in crest scaling. So Dragon's Luard is a pretty solid alternate card. It's one of our few strides that doesn't use any CB at all, so that makes it a good thing to go into when the opponent's been damage denying you. And if you have nothing but 1 card in play, this can get you everything you need, essentially. Next, we have 2 copies of Dark Knight Crow Kruok. This is a restanding Vanguard stride. It has retire 2 rear guards to retire 3 of your opponent's rear guards, and if they didn't retire 3, you get red text at the end of the battle this unit attacks, counterblast 1, and stand it, and retire 2 of your own rear guards, and then it gets 10k. So this is a very sacrifice-hungry card. You're going to need to kill a total of 4 of your own rear guards to get the full power of it. Again, we're really good at producing units, so that's not that big an issue. The stand trigger can really come in handy here. But importantly, this card doesn't get minus drive on the restand, so you're getting 6 drive checks, which is absolutely worth it. It's also good to go into when you don't have high crest scaling yet. You can just throw a big Vanguard at them and build a defensive hand for the future. It's also good against decks that want to have units in play on your side so they can mess with you, like Link Joker and things like that. So that's Crow Kruok. You might have to go into this multiple times a game. Otherwise, if you only go into it once and flip the other copy, that's fine too. Then we have 2 Dark Dragon Phantom Blaster Diablos. This is a niche card, but it has a pretty powerful effect. It has CB1 and choose a face down card with the same name and flip it. And then your opponent retires, I believe, 2 rear guards. Yeah. So until turn, this unit gets 10k in a crit, and when it attacks a Vanguard, choose 3 of your rear guards and retire them, and your opponent may choose 2 of his or her rear guards and retire them. And if 2 rear guards were not retired, your opponent cannot call cards from hand to G until end of that battle. So the main use of this is to hard punish someone for playing Bracing Angel Ladder. Now they can't retire anything. Here's a Vanguard that you can't guard from hand with. You have to G Guardian to guard this. If your G Guardians are perfect cards, you're probably going to have to G Guardian it twice or something just to get it 2 to pass. Because we're not going to go into this early in the game. We're going to go into like turn 4 or 5 onward. So it's going to be huge. Plus, it gets 10k in a crit, so it's already 38 base with no other modifiers. So this is a really scary end game. If the opponent's at 4, they have to dump like everything they have to try and guard this, or dump an Elementaria right away. And against decks like Angel Gize, it's just a free win on the spot. Angel Gize has, or any Gize deck in general will have this problem. Their 0th dragons can't be moved anywhere, and they can't be targeted for anything. So they can't retire anything for this effect, which means that the effect is active. They can't call from hand to G. But Gize is an ultimate stride and removes your G zone from the game at the end of the turn. So they have no G zone, therefore no G Guardians. And they can't be playing Elementaria because 1, Blitz orders can't affect Gize, and 2, they're on a grade 4 Vanguard. Elementaria isn't playable. You need to be on a grade 3 or less, I believe. So this card will just put them in a situation where they can't call anything to guard, and their board's all 0th dragons. So there's no effects they could use in play to try to superior call a Guardian, and this will just be crit, hitting just over their 30k power Gize, and if we drive check any crits, we can just kill them on the spot. So it's nice for those matchups. And also just in general, you can punish someone for having an empty board, or for having played Bracing Angel Ladder or something, or units with all resist. Then we have 1 Draganger Ogma. This card has the effect at Ritual 5. You can CB1, Soul Blast 1. Choose a card from your G zone face down and flip it face up. And you choose up to 5 of your rear guards and retire them. And for each rear guard that you did, your opponent puts a card from their hand or rears into drop. And then if 3 or more total were put in, you get to draw a card. So the main use of this is the opponent has an empty board, or again, a board that they use Bracing Angel Ladder on. You can force them to discard as many cards as you're willing to retire. So you can potentially -5 the opponent's hand. If you have Crest Scaling and they're at high damage, that alone can be a win condition right on the spot. Maybe you only have 2 units to call after that, but you call them in the front row and the crest scaling saves you. Maybe you hit a stand trigger and you get 4 attacks out of that, and the opponent's just dead because you -5 to them and they have nothing to guard with. It's a really strong effect in very specific scenarios. We're not going to go into this very often, but when we do, it'll be funny and it'll win us the game. And we have our G Guardians. I'll lay these out all together. Most importantly, we're starting with Dark Dragon, Deep Griever Dragon. This is our most important G Guardian. It's also probably one of the better ones in the game. It has the effect that when you guard with it, you can choose up to 5 grade 1s from drop and put them on the bottom, and it gets 5k shield for each one. And if you put 5, you can CB1 and get a perfect artifact. Really, really strong. It gets around a lot of Garter Strix or Sentinel Break combos and stuff like that, and can just catch an opponent off guard if they don't know what Shadow Paladins does, and it's a really solid card for survivability. It gives us even more perfect cards on top of our recycling perfect cards and our potential, if we're playing it, intercept perfect cards. Overall, extremely powerful, and it recycles our grade 1, so we never deck out, and we always have the pieces we need to search for. Then we have Dragweiser Bronic. This card, on Guardian, you look at the top 5, or you reveal the top 5 rather, you call all the grade 1s to Guardian, and you put the rest on the bottom, and that should be enough to guard a medium-sized attack. If we call a perfect guard, we're guarding anything. If we just call grade 1s, we are building up Ritual, and that's primarily the use of this card for me. I use it on my first G Guardian in the early game to try to build Ritual to make sure I can go into Morfessa if I went first that game. Also, in the late game, if you haven't used it yet, it can be a Hail Mary G-Guard. If you've been returning Perfect Guards to your deck by either the Vanguard skill or their own skill, you can potentially have maybe, let's say, 1 or 2 PGs left in the deck, and maybe your deck is like 8 cards. You could try to Bronic into one of them, and maybe survive an attack that should absolutely kill you. Then we have 1 copy of Witch Queen of Iniquity, Jolita. This is the G-Guardian Flipper. You turn over another G-Guardian for the cost. And this has the effect that you can move up to 2 of your grade 1 rear guards to Guardian, and if you did, you draw a card. Now, I believe this doesn't specify Sentinel, so that means you can just perfect guard if you have a perfect guard in play. Also, you can just move 2 cards that you want in the drop zone to recycle, like a Charon that's already used its countercharge effect, and this will just get you some value off of it while also guarding a medium-sized attack, while also flipping another card face up in the G zone, giving you more crest scaling. This is also good to use as your last G Guardian if it will be enough to guard the attack, because then you'll have the maximum amount of crest scaling you can have going into your next turn. Overall, the G zone I think is pretty solid. The only cards you could consider trimming are like this and the second Crow Kurok. Everything else feels pretty mandatory. But this could potentially give you either more G Guardian slots to play a Dismal or something else like that, or you could play a utility card, or if you're in an event where you cannot play the Overtrigger, you could consider trying to play Ultima, which is a really strong 0 with Dragon. Ultima lets you stack the deck, and that's why it's not legal to play with the Overtrigger, but it is potentially a really good combo, and something you can stack stand crit and get a full board restand and plus crit to everything. And then lastly, we have 1 Harmonics Messiah. Every deck has to play Harmonics Messiah. They give you a Guardian Shield when you go second, and then they have other useful effects like being able to self-damage yourself and unlock your board. So that is the G-Zone and main deck. Let's talk quickly about some alternatives you can play before we get into an attack pattern. This is Dragfall Luard. This is the other option as a ride target. Dragfall Luard, it's like a baby version of Dragheart. He has Ritual X. You may pay 4 CB and put a normal unit from the bottom. I think it's a card act. No, it's a normal unit from drop on the bottom of the deck to get to pay for the cost of Stride or Ultimate Stride. But then the Ritual X means that the CB is reduced by 1 for every grade 1 in your drop. So it's usually CB 0 and put a card back to get free Stride. It's not true free Stride. You are paying a cost. 0 is a cost, and your Crest will not put back a crit trigger. And then it has on Stride, you can CB 1, search your deck for grade 1 and call it, or grade 1 or lower card and call it, and then if you call the Ritual card, you get to retire something in the same column. So that gives you a little bit of board control. It gives you less recycling every turn and less searching every turn. So in scenarios where you need to get a full board fast, like you need to play Crow Kurok, or you need to go into Dragon or Ogma, or into Diablo, this card often won't be able to get you all the way there on its own. You'll have to commit more cards from hand, which means that you're spending more cards to get the same effect that Dragheart could get. But being able to board control a little bit is going to be helpful. We can get rid of problematic units. Ironically, if the opponent has like a hostage build or something where they can keep perfect guards in play and intercept with them, we can kill those if they don't have resist. We can snipe our opponent's anomalies, which isn't that big a deal, but sometimes it'll matter. And importantly, this is easier to get free stride with going second. As long as you can get 4 grade 1s into drop, which is not unreasonable to do going second by turn 3, you can then get your free stride going. That alone might make it appealing. Also, it's pretty good in the mirror. If your opponent's playing Dragheart Lord and you're playing this, you can snipe their unit they left in play to have to sacrifice to Dragheart and sometimes turn off their Vanguard skill. But overall, I like Dragheart Lord more, but I often flip-flop between considering whether this card is better or not. I think it's like 6 one way, half a dozen the other. Play the one you think is cooler. Other concerns or alternatives to consider, Emancipating Adventure Allele is a heal trigger that countercharges or soul charges when you pitch it for G-Guardian by binding itself in another heal from drop. It clashes with your Cradle odds. You can play a single Drag Driver Lord and then play Chainranker Dragon in your G-Zone. If you go into this, it has 2 important effects. One, on place, you CB1 and search your deck for up to the same number of cards in your soul with Luard in their name, +1 as grade 1s. Sorry, let me re-explain that. That was kind of badly worded. You search for up to the number of cards in your soul with Luard in their names +1, grade 1 cards. This card is somewhat confusing to read, but you're searching for grade 1s based on how many Luards are in soul and add 1 to that number. You call Luard and shuffle the deck. So this will help you instantly build a board, but more importantly, if you go into Chainranker, you get to use the other effect, which is that it gets 5k for each of your grade 1 rearguards, and if you have 2 or more grade 3s in soul, the original crit of all of your grade 1 rearguards becomes 2. So you get to start setting up attacks with crit and 3-card guard from Chainrankor. Now you won't get that on every attack because you're probably going to have to mix it with some amount of Dagda or Kus grade attacks in order to generate more attacks overall, but you'll still have 3-card guard on all of them at least. Also, the Vanguard will be absolutely gigantic. If you have a full board of grade 1s, it'll be +25. Really, really strong effect to consider going into. You would preferably do this with Raziel, but unfortunately, we can't play Raziel. We're on a Crest. We have to ride Luards. Other things to consider are the G version of Abyssal Owl. This has countercharge when you retire it by the effect or cost of your Luard card, and that is pretty easy to achieve, and it lets you do funny things like search Charon plus this off of your on-stride effect. So countercharge once to use your 1 damage and get it back face up, and then use Morfessa to retire this plus Charon to put these back in a drop to set up for next turn, and also get another countercharge so that you use that 1 CB twice already in the turn, and you're about to use it a 3 time. This makes you much more efficient at low damage games. It goes in and out of my list all the time. I am probably leaning towards putting it back in soon. And then aside from that, Belial Owl will give you a self-recycling crit to get 2 crits back in a deck every turn potentially. You can play more copies of Dagda and other grade 2s if you don't want to play things like the Maple or things like the Dump a Dragon Blaster Dart combo. So that is the deck list. Let's show you what the ideal winning turn might look like. We're going to assume, of course, that we're on a bit of a later turn, and that we're going to stride into Morfessa this turn, and we're going to flip over something else this turn. So we're on a Luard. We probably did the ideal write-up of Crest into Dump a Dragon off of the 1 card, which is over here. So we went into Blaster Dark, we used a Dump a Dragon, we soul blasted out the 0, that's fine. We have an domain in play, some other things. I'm going to artificially add some cards to drop to make us closer to Ritual 10, because remember that Ritual 10 counts the triggers 2 when we're on Morfessa. So assuming we've used a bunch of cards like this, maybe we used a Perfect Guard, a couple grade 1s, a heal or 2. We now have our ritual set up. 7. Let's add 1 more for good measure. Okay. Then we're going to assume we're at about 4 damage. So we took a couple hits with triggers, and then maybe we damaged a Fallen Dive Eagle and a copy of Luard or something. So our board looks like this. We have this face up in the G zone. We have, of course, the Crest active, and we're on this Vanguard. And let's assume we've searched out the exact combo I mentioned, where we searched out Charon plus plus a useful card. In this case, let's search out a domain, because we're going to end up using one of these domains and leaving one in play. It's always good to have 2 domains if you're going to retire one of them, so that you have the next domain for the next turn after you've recycled the other domain back in the deck with a G Guardian. Okay, so we're also going to need Dagda. Dagda is absolutely critical for this winning image. And let's say that we have something like just another Crest Maker here, or we won't need that yet. So in this state, let's say we've used 2 CB from previous turns. We search this turn, so we'll Soul Blast out of 1 to countercharge right now. Then we'll rest, say we'll rest this domain in order to search for a 5k. We can search for something like V-Crow, and then we can activate Morfessa, flipping over this Crow Kurok. We should have a Morfessa face up from a previous turn as well. So in this case, we have 20k to the front row from our Crest. Now our triggers count for Ritual, and we're going to draw 2 cards. These cards aren't going to matter. We're going to retire these 2 cards, by the way, for that effect. We'll activate this domain to guarantee that we have an attacker. Though in this case, I did draw an attacker. I'm just going to make sure that I have something. It doesn't have to be anything good. It just has to be 5k power. So in this case, let's assume we had to call this. And because we're trying to kill the opponent, we're not really worried about defense here. So our board looks something like this. We have 20k to the front row from Crest scaling, and we have ourselves 15k to every unit, and crit to every unit, and 2-card guard. This card goes into Soul and countercharges, so we're back up to only 1 CB spent. So in this situation, we can do something like this. We can swing for this card first. This is going to be 20, 35, 40 to Van with a crit and 2-card guard. The opponent's going to have to spend some resources to take that, unless they want to force themselves with damage right now. And that's kind of the difficulty of playing against Morfessa. Do you take the 2 damage early to try to defensives, or do you try to guard everything and hope that the drive checks don't really get in the way? In this case, let's say the opponent guarded, and we swing here, and we CB1, retire this grade 1. We get to search for up to 2 grade 1s. We're going to call an Eldona here, and let's say another copy of this card, because we're going to want retire fodder for Eldona in the event that we don't hit a stand. This attack was going to be 44 with a crit and 2-card guard. That's a decent sized number. And again, this is assuming we only used 1 G Guardian. If we G Guardianed twice, we could have had potentially even more, because we could have had another 10k if we went into the G Guardian that flipped something. So this attack comes in, and then but instead of swinging with this, we would want to swing with Morfessa. Also worth noting that if you have the red OT, you would swing with the Vanguard before you swing with the Dagda, so that you could put the red OT here if you hit it. But I have a purple OT, so we're going to swing here. This is going to be 28, 43, 63 with a crit and 2-card guard. The opponent perfect guards that. That's 3 cards out of their hand, because they'll have to pay for the cost of PG and then add another card to Guardian, which is pretty solid. We're going to drive check. In this case, we hit a 2, a 2, and a 3. So we didn't get anything out of it. And thus we would terminate the attack pattern early here. We'd CB1. We could retire these 2 cards to draw 2. And then just off of drive checks and cards drawn from card effect, we ended up plussing 7 cards this turn. So that's 7 plus whatever we had in hand already. Now let's see what things would have looked like if one of these cards was a stand trigger. It would be a lot more threatening. So we hit a stand. In that case, this card would still be standing. Dagda would get stood, and we'd add 5k here, probably. Then we could swing here. We could still draw the 2 cards from retiring those, because we have 1 more grade 1 to retire. We could swing with Dagda 1 more time after this, retire this, and search for up to 2 grade 1s. In this case, we could find a domain just to have it set up for next turn, and literally any grade 1 we want to attack with. If we have any more Crest Makers, we could find those. In this case, I'm actually starting to run out. So we would either be calling a Perfect Guard or a Honolly. If we do that, we probably want the Honolly in the back row. But if we're going to use the Perfect Guard, actually, no matter what, we want this in the front row, and either the Perfect Guard or the Honolly in the back row. If we want to use Jolito, we can then move these to Guardian together. Otherwise, we get a Honolly here, and we can set up defensive power for the opponent's next turn. Technically, this card doesn't specify open R or anything like that. It says separate R. So in theory, if I've understood this correctly, you also can just call like this if you have a lot of crest scaling. But in this case, we don't have the biggest numbers right now. So we'd rather go for another higher quality attack, in which case this is going to be 35, 40, 46 with crit and 2-card guard. If the opponent had a small hand to begin with, or only a medium-sized hand, this is already going to strip all the shield value out of their hands. A lot of these numbers hit just over 1 G Guardian as well, except for some of the higher powered G Guardians and the better clans. But if they're on G Guardians, they give about 30k shield. Like for instance, Genesis has a really good G Guardian that only gives 30k shield, and another that only gives 25k shield. This can be pretty devastating, because they'll have to either spend another heal to G Guardian and thus force them to guard from hand for something else in the future, or so on and so forth. And this can pretty much pressure the opponent so hard that they're out of cards by the end of our turn if we get everything going together. Again, the numbers, we can just do this every turn forever, essentially. All these grade 1s that end up with a drop, we can G Guardian once and get them all back. And we don't have to go as hard on searching a full board of grade 1s all the time. We can just put 2 cards back with Luard, search those 2 cards out with Luard, and then use something like a stand trigger to get random fodder for Morfessa to sacrifice to get the Ritual 10 effect. And then we can just keep the grade 1s in deck at a maximum, search as little out as possible, and then just start using those only as search targets for Dagda. That lets us basically do this forever until we hit a heal trigger, at which point we just put 5 cards back with the Griever Dragon. So that's the deck. This just keeps getting worse for the opponent the longer they do it. It strips them of hand, and also, because everything has crit, the opponent is kind of forced into damage dying themselves or going up to way too high damage too fast. And once they're at 5, we could do something like pivot into a Chain Rancor if you want to play that. I'm currently not playing a Chain Rancor on my list. Or you could pivot into Drag Abyss Luard for the absolutely high power scaling, or something like Kruak for restanding Vanguard with big numbers and potentially lots of trigger spamming, and just finish them off from 5. Or you can just keep going into Morfessa and make it mathematically impossible for them to guard everything if you have enough attacks and if their hand is small enough. So that's the deck. Luard basically does something like this every game over and over, and the real interesting part is figuring out the puzzle of getting units back in a deck that you need, getting the defensive pieces you need, trying to figure out what you still have left to search for, and whether you need to use a card in hand because you don't have any copies of that card left to search. So knowing how many cards you can search in the main is really important. And how to navigate matchups defensively, and when to search for Hanli, when to remove Hanli, things like that. Those all add a lot of difficulty to the deck, but the actual attack pattern is pretty simple. So that is Luard, as simply as I can put it. There is a lot more to playing this deck, but we don't have time for that. You're basically just going to go into Morfessa as much as possible. The other strides are things you consider for edge cases, mostly. But that's all for now. This video will be going up on a week that I'm traveling, and so I will not be able to reply to any comments for a little bit, but I will try to see them and think about my replies until I get back, and then give you something at least, which should be roughly half a week or a week after this is posted. That's all for now, though, and see you next time.